Let's talk a little bit about these different blur galleries. There are 5 different blurs: field blur, iris blur, tilt shift, path blur, and spin blur. Each one of them gives us an on-image selective motion blur tool with an additional blur pin. You can create additional blur pins by clicking on the image. You can apply a single blur or a combination of blurs, and you can create a strobe effect for path and spin blurs. So just let's show you what each of those does. Field blur is a gradient blur to the areas of the image divided by pins that you create and settings you specify for each. When you first apply this, a pin is placed in the center of an image, and you can adjust the blur relative to that point by dragging the blur handle or specifying a value in the blur tools panel. You can also drag the pin to a different location. So field blur, there's an example. Tilt shift simulates an image taken with a tilt shift lens, where the image has a very shallow depth of field with the focus point in the distance. And you can see how this is where this picture started, and you can see how its focus is now like this. It defines a plane of sharpness and then fades outward to a blur. You can use this effect to simulate photos of miniature objects. Next, we have iris blur, which progressively blurs everything outside the focus ring. Adjust the ellipse handles, feather handles, and blur amount to customize the iris blur. It can be a quick way to approximate a shallow depth of field effect. You can see this person here, and then you see the blur around like this. Spin blur, a radial style blur measured in degrees. You can change the size and shape of the ellipse, recenter the rotation point by pressing Alt or Option, and drag and adjust the blur angle. So you can see this is an example before and after. Kind of gives me a headache looking at that. Path blur creates motion blurs along paths you draw. So you can see this was the beginning and this is the end. Another one that's giving me a headache. When you first apply a path blur, a default path appears. You would drag the endpoint to reposition it, and you can read all of that, and it would show you what you would do. You can add a strobe effect to spin and path blurs. You would select motion effects to bring the panel forward. The slider determines how much blur shows between flash and exposures, and you can see what they've done here. And then lastly, applying a blur will smooth out visible digital image noise or film grain that's in the original image. And this mismatch between the original and blurred areas can make the blur appear artificial. You see that this one had no blur in the beginning, and you can see that there's blur around now. So which blur effect simulates a shallow depth of field effect, gradually blurring everything outside the focus ring? The correct answer would be an iris blur. So that's just a little bit about different types of blurs. Next, we are going to work on creating a panorama. Now, most of you have a cell phone that allows you to take a panorama, but occasionally there's times where you may have an instance where you want to take a series of pictures, and Photoshop can create a panorama for you. Back on June 3rd of 2021, the administration at the school approached me, and they wanted to know if I could take an aerial photo of our campus with a drone. The problem was, well, if I sent the drone up and if I wanted to get just this, I would have to go up so high and it would not be as clear as it is now. So what I did was I took a series, I think this was 40 something pictures. I started the drone over here. I took a picture, I moved it over, took a picture, moved it over, took a picture, moved it over, took so on and so forth. And I did this the whole campus. From that, I was able to get Photoshop to create a panorama for me. Pretty cool, huh? You're going to find out how you're going to do that. So sometimes a vista is too large for a single shot. Photoshop makes it easy to combine multiple images into a panorama so that your viewers can get the full effect. So let me go and get the picture that you're going to end up with. Hold on just a second. All right, so this is what our finished image looks like. Nice panorama, and we're going to create this. So let's do this. Click File. I'm leery about doing this. Browsing bridge. Lesson 5. Let's see if this is going to work. Oh, hang on. Got to get this phone call. Sorry, let me pause. All right, so go to the files for panorama. And you see you've got 4 images here. And let's see. Hang on. They just wanted us to look at those. So I'm going to close this. Now, no files are open, so click File, Automate, and then go to Photo Merge down at the bottom. All right, click Browse, go to your Lesson 5 folder, and go to your files for panorama. Then you have 5. So click on the first one, hold down the Shift key, click on the bottom one, and that selects all of them. And then click Open. In the layout area of the Photo Merge dialog box, we're going to select Perspective right here. Depending on what type of images you have, you're going to see you got a bunch of different choices. Perspective is not always the best. It depends on how the originals were photographed. If you're not completely happy with the result of a particular merge, you can always try again with a different layout option. If you're not sure which one to use, you can simply click Auto. At the bottom of the Photo Merge dialog box, select Blend Images Together, should be selected. Vignette Removal, check that. Geometric Distortion Correction, check that. And Content Aware Fill Transparent Areas, check that. And then click OK. And we have to wait for it. Depending on what computer you're at and what type of computer you have may depend on how long it takes. So Blend Images Together blends images based on the optimal borders between them. Instead of creating a simple rectangular merge, Vignette Removal helps ensure consistent brightness when merging images that are darker around their edges. Geometric Distortion Correction compensates for barrel, pincushion, or fisheye distortion. Content Aware Fill Transparent Areas automatically patches the empty areas between the merged image edges and the sides of the canvas. So Photoshop has created a panorama image. It's a complex process, so you may have to wait. When it's finished, you'll see the full vista of the document window with 5 layers in the Layers panel. The bottom 4 layers are the original 4 images you selected. Photoshop identified the overlapping areas of the images and matched them, correcting any angular discrepancies. The top layer, containing merged in the layer name, is a single panorama. You see that right here. It's blended from all the images we selected, combined with the formerly empty areas filled in by Content Aware Fill. Those areas are indicated by the selection. Photo Merge requires more time when you merge more images or images with large pixel dimensions. Photo Merge works faster on the computers that are newer or have more RAM. If you want to see how the panorama looks without the areas created by Content Aware Fill, you could hide the top layer. So if we hide that, that's what it looked like without that Content Aware Fill. So Content Aware Fill is pretty stinking amazing, I would say. So if you plan to create panoramas of interiors or with objects close to the camera, rotating a camera by hand or on a tripod may introduce parallax errors when items don't line up. You can avoid such errors by using a tripod attachment, sometimes called a nodal slide, never heard that before, that precisely rotates the camera around the entrance pupil of the specific lens you use. So, let's do this. Go to select, deselect, and that deselects everything. And then let's choose layer, flatten image. In the finished panorama files, the layers created from the original images have masks. Photoshop created the masks to blend the edges where adjacent images match. You can edit those masks, but if you won't need to, flattening the image results in a smaller file size. So the panorama looks great, but it's a little dark. We're going to add a levels adjustment layer to brighten it a little bit. So click the levels icon in the adjustments panel. So go to the adjustments panel. And my phone, can y'all hear my phone? It's like some of y'all. But it's storming and my family's worried about me, so that's why my phone keeps binging. Select the white point eyedropper in the properties panel. So there's a white point, so click that. And then click a white area of the clouds. When you did that, you see it brightened things up. That works when you click an area it's close to, but not exactly pure white. If an image doesn't change when you click it with the white point eyedropper, you probably clicked an area that can't become any whiter, and there's no color cast to correct. That happens when the pixel values you clicked are already pure white in all color channels. So our image should have brightened. The sky appears more blue because the image was originally a little warm. The white point eyedropper neutralized the warm cast. So let's click. And you can see, if you want to see what it did, if you hide that layer, so you see that is much better. Beautiful. You probably thought it was difficult to create a panoramic image. You realize now that it's really not. So let's click File. We're going to click Save As. And panorama underscore your last name, and save it on your computer. I'm going to put it in my lesson file or 5 folder, Photoshop, save. Okay. So it's that easy to create a panorama. So here's a question for you. Geometric distortion correction compensates for which type of distortion? Is it barrel, pincushion, fisheye, or all of the above? If you said all of the above, you got it correct. Congratulations.